Transitions, the podcast by Ostrum Asset Management.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Transitions, the podcast from Ostrum Asset Management that explores the challenges of sustainable finance and responsible investing. Today, we're focusing on an asset class that has seen significant growth in recent years, sustainable bonds. These financial instruments are no longer a novelty. They are true drivers of transformation for companies. Green bonds, social bonds, transition bonds, what are they really about? What role do they play in the ecological and social transition? And most importantly, how does this market react to such a tumultuous political and regulatory context? To discuss this, we're pleased to welcome two passionate experts who follow these issues closely. Timothée Pubellier, Senior Portfolio Manager and Specialist in Sustainable Bonds, and Sanda Molotcov, Head of the Credit and Sustainability Research Team at Ostrum AM. Together, they will help us gain clarity and understand the dynamics at play. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hey.
So Timothée, can you start by reminding us about the different types of sustainable bonds that exist and giving us an update on the state of the market?
Of course, there are several categories of sustainable bonds. First, you have the green bonds. They are designed to finance projects with a positive environmental impact. Think renewable energy, green building, or clean mobility. Then you have social bonds. They are financing projects with a positive impact on the life of people. You can think education, health, affordable housing, job creation, or training, for example. Then you have sustainability bonds, which are a hybrid category financing both green and social projects. On the one hand, they offer greater flexibility, but on the other hand, they can be perceived as less targeted. You also have SLBs, sustainability-linked bonds, which are bonds which are linked to performance of the issuer with return depending on the achievement of predetermined objectives. Then you have transition bonds, which are designed to help companies in carbon-intensive sector to finance their transition to a more sustainable economy. Unlike green bonds, they target projects that are in the process of transitioning towards sustainability. You have blue bonds, which are designed to protect the oceans, and orange bonds, which are designed to promote gender equality and the economic empowerment of women. So overall, the sustainable bond market represents 975 billion euros in 2024, and it's rapidly evolving. If you look at the dynamic in place of the market in January 2025 versus 2024, you can see that green bond issuance have experienced a slight decline, while those of social and sustainability bonds are increasing. In terms of geographical emission, you have China and the US that are becoming key driver on this market. And for example, on the social debt, the US have become a really big player. If we put some number on each categories, the green bond market is the biggest one with 62%. Then you have the sustainability bonds with 17%, social bond with 15%, and finally the SLB with 6%.
Thanks for this update. Timothée, Sanda, can you explain to us how sustainable bonds help to finance the transition?
So the transition have really important needs in terms of financing. For example, the International Energy Agency estimates that $3.5 trillion per year will be needed until 2030 to achieve the climate goals. So there are significant funding needs, particularly in renewable energy and batteries.
Speaking about that, Timothée, let's focus on the utilities sectors in Europe, whose transformation is at the heart of the energy transition. Out of the 75 billion euros in bonds issued by the companies operating in the utility sector last year, 70% were green bonds. According to Repower EU, a European working group, the financing needs for electricity transmission and distribution networks will amount to euro 584 billion by 2030, leading to capex increases ranging from plus 60 to plus 300% depending on the operators. That is huge. Part of these investments will be financed through green bonds to build new network connecting renewable farms, modernize existing networks in response to growing electricity demand from electric vehicles and data centers associated with artificial intelligence needs, and adapt infrastructure to the challenges of climate change. Particularly, there is a need to worry about 40% of existing power grid in order to protect it from natural catastrophes such as wind and storms, of which part is related to climate change.
All those projects Sanda is talking about should trigger a virtuous circle. Indeed, the transition to a green economy could create 24 million jobs by 2030, according to the International Labour Organization. This will require investment in training and skill development for workers. Overall, the transition to a sustainable economy must take social impact into account, particularly ensuring that workers in declining sectors are supported by training programs, job retraining, and social safety nets. Sustainable bonds are therefore a necessary instrument to achieve a just transition.
Sanda, good intentions aside, could you tell us how Ostrum teams analyze the various bonds issued to ensure that investors get a good deal?
Yes, sure. We have built our approach to assess sustainable bonds based on the recognition that the market is still a self-labeled market. Thus, investors may be exposed to controversies should they just take for granted what the issuers say. We employ a proprietary and qualitative analysis to assess whether, let's say, a green bond is truly sustainable. This is complemented by a quantitative evaluation of the use of proceeds for each specific bonds. Our 22 credits and sustainability analysts assess the projects financed by sustainable bonds within the broader context of each issuer. We look at its business model, its climate transition strategy, its financing capacity to transition its own business model, and how the finance project or activities fit into the overall context of the company business model and strategy. Only then do we analyze the sustainable bond framework and the actual use of proceeds, allowing us to internally assess the distribution of finance projects and their impact. This dual assessment, both of the issuer and the bond, enables us to support the portfolio manager's investment decisions and reinforce our investments towards bonds and issuers when we are comfortable with both company profile and the use of sustainable bonds proceeds. Alternatively, it also allows us to anticipate problematic credit situations or those that may become so in the future. Finally, it enables us to verify over time that the company is fulfilling its promise regarding the allocation of raised funds to the initially planned projects. Timothée, you remember the example of this North American company that claimed to finance hydroelectric dams with green bonds. After analyzing the situation, we discovered that a portion of the funds was used to renovate existing nuclear plants. With trust broken, we removed these bonds from our investment strategies.
So based on what we've said, Sanda, Timothée, what is the outlook for the sustainable bond market?
We cannot talk about the future of sustainable bonds without putting the sustainable goals they serve in the overall economic context of the bond issuing companies. Europe is at a turning point. With the United States withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, competition with China over green technologies, and rising energy prices due to the war in Ukraine, the European Union is reassessing its priorities between energy sovereignty, maintaining the competitiveness of European companies, and of course, the climate considerations. The issues surrounding the financing of the European defense have recently been added to the agenda, since Europe has realized that it can no longer rely on the United States to guarantee its security. It remains to be seen where climate goals and their financing will fit into this new equation. The package of measures called Omnibus, announced on February 26 by the European Commission, along with a Clean Industrial Deal, illustrates this challenge. However, we see these measures as a rather reasonable and pragmatic approach. Specifically, the Omnibus package aimed to simplify sustainability reporting rules for companies, thereby reducing the administrative burdens they face. As analysts, the reduced scope and depth of companies' reporting requirements would not make our life easier as we had initially hoped. Nevertheless, we do not believe that the political will to protect national energy sovereignty or to defend companies' competitiveness undermines their commitment to maintaining their sustainability goals, particularly concerning the climate issues. Indeed, despite their exit from the major net zero alliances and an overall pro-fossil fuel backdrop, especially in the United States, we observe that most corporates and financial institutions do maintain their climate commitments. They may be less vocal about their objectives, but it seems they remain just as disciplined, if not more realistic, about their transition plans, as they are significantly more mature in their thinking.
I'm 100% aligned with Sanda. I think for next year, the two main drivers will be politics and regulation. First, in politics, you have the return of Donald Trump in the White House. So this will be a challenge for the sustainable ecosystem, as you will have a loosening of environmental regulation and a renewed interest in fossil fuels. We can even see greenwashing. It means that companies may opt for a more discreet approach to their sustainability commitments to avoid political or reputational skills. On the side of regulation, without wanting to be provocative, let us ask whether it would be possible for defense to fit within the ESG regulatory framework by being included in social taxonomy. So you can think that defense has nothing to do with ESG, but defense contributes positively to social objectives as peace, security, or protection of human rights. This could justify the integration of non-lethal defense technologies or disarmament programs into ESG investment. Moreover, actors traditionally considered excluded from the sustainable world, namely oil companies, could well provide a concrete example of successful transition tomorrow, with SAF, the sustainable aviation fuel, derived from waste of food or vegetable oil, which can reduce CO2 emission by up to 80%. However, SAF is often produced by players in the oil industry who master hydrocarbon processes and adapt their production. The adoption of SAF still heavily depends on government incentive policies as its production costs remain high. However, in the long term, we could see oil companies issuing green bonds to finance the necessary investments. In the end, the market for sustainable bonds should therefore continue to grow with colossal financing needs, even if the areas of application are likely to evolve in the future. Regulation and political context will play a key role in guiding these investments.
Thanks, Timothée. It seems like the world still has a few surprises in store for us. Thank you, Sanda. Thank you, Timothée, for your fascinating insight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to our listeners for joining us for this new edition of Transitions, the podcast from Ostrum Asset Management. You can find all our episodes on the main streaming platforms and on our website. See you soon.